Namaskar. Welcome to this session. We are considering the Himsa tendency, and therein we came to understand the concept of Pancamaha yagnas. First of all, Himsa is a natural tendency. Secondly, there is inevitable Himsa in dynamics of life. It is unavoidable. However, it is definitely a demerit. It is definitely a sin. It is definitely papa. So, Himsa of any kind, on any account, on any reason, or even if it is inevitable, yet it is Adharma, it is papa. And therefore, the rishis of the lore prescribed Pancamaha yagnas in the light of the fact that certain Himsa is inevitable in very dynamics of life. And therefore we understand, we get a clue here that Ahimsa is a principle that has come in Dharma. Because Pancamaha yagnas is part of Vedic Dharma. The Vedic Dharma has prescribed Pancamaha yagnas. It is because of this Himsa. Now, if you recall, we understood that the Ashtanga Yoga Anusthana is Dharma, Niti, Dharma, Achara Niti, Pranali. So there is that Dharma. And for this Dharma, there is no word in any other language. It should not be mistaken to religion or religions. So, the Dharma, as it comes in Manu Dharma Smriti and Dharma Shastras, the Pancamaha yagnas are prescribed in Dharma Shastras, and therefore in Vedic philosophy and conduct of life, the concept of Dharma is absolutely important. And the epics, Rama and Mahabharata, tell us about. Dharma Shastra tells us about how Dharma is important. Bhagwan Sri.Rama was declared to be Vigrahavan Dharma, that is, incarnation of Dharma, manifestation of Dharma, personification of Dharma. And then Sri.Rama's life is something that tells us about what is Dharma, how is Dharma. So perhaps Bhagwan Sri.Ram can be recognized as Dharmavatar. For him, Dharma was paramount. So we need to understand life of Bhagwan Sri.Rama to understand Dharma. We need to also understand the purport and import of Srimad Ramayanam. Because first of all, we must be on the path of Dharma to be path of Paramartha, Adhyatma, spirituality. You cannot be overlooking Dharma and then yet be on the path of spirituality, Adhyatma and Paramartha. The Dharma is supreme, and in the light of our times, we need to be aware of the fact that Dharma is not religion. Religion is a body of beliefs. You have to adhere to beliefs. The point is, Dharma here Ahimsa, Satya, Asteya, Brahmacharya, Yamani, and the Yamaniyamas, Ashtanga Yoga entire, it comes in Dharma, Niti, Pranali, Dharma, Achara, Niti, Pranali. So Dharma is so important. The point is, what is this Dharma? It is so difficult to understand Dharma as it is in our times. And as I said, for that purpose, Srimad Ramayanam, Sri.Rama Caritam, the life of Bhagwan Sri.Rama, will tell us about what Dharma is. His conduct of life is nothing but Dharma and Dharma and Dharma. He was always on the track of Dharma, never deviated from the path of Dharma for any reason, for any purpose, for any moment in life, due to any contingency in life. He always, invariably, unfailingly adhered to Dharma. So if one wants to understand Dharma, it is to look into the life of Bhagwan Sri.Rama and the Srimad Ramayanam of Valmiki. Anyway, so what is this Dharma? Then yet we have to make an endeavor as to what is this Dharma. Let me draw your attention to Vaisheshika Darshana, Kana da Darshana, Kana da Sutras, very opening of the text. It commences with a sutra. Kana da Maharshi is declaring what is Dharma. And he says Vaisheshika Darshana is for Dharma. So, also, as I said about Srimad Ramayanam, to understand the concept of Dharma, Vaisheshika Darshanam is also one which tells us about Dharma. Because he comments as Athato Dharma Vyakhyasya. That's how the Vaisheshika Darshana commences. And immediately the following sutra defines Dharma beautifully. Yato Abhyudaya Nishreyasa Samsiddhi Sa Dharmaha. What is Dharma? Where Abhyudayam, that is good in world, the worldly good, the good in all the seven planes, Saptalokas, whatever is good on Laukika plane, on the plane of Lokas, that is called Abhyudaya. So it is material well-being in other terms. Our material life, material well-being is ensured by certain set of practices, and that is called Dharma. But not just Abhyudaya, because then that would be a mistaken notion. Yato Abhyudaya Nishreyasa, even the Nishreyasa, Samsiddhi. So Abhyudaya and Nishreyasa. What is Nishreyasa? Nishreyasa is transcendent good, spiritual good, metaphysical good. So our wellness and well-being here and hereafter, in material and beyond material worlds, that one which bestows the good of both is called Dharma. Dharma is not just for Abhyudaya and not just for Nishreyasa, but both good here and hereafter, both on material plane and trans-material plane. So, Dharma is that form from which results attainment of upliftment, elevation, good and highest good. All the good is attained by Dharma, and the highest good too is attained by Dharma. So Dharma is not only for highest good but dharma is also for good. And that is why Dharma Shastras have been beseeching mankind to be adhering to the path of dharma. So point is, dharma is not set of beliefs, religion, a fiat by a religious head to mankind, do's and don'ts, do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that, etc. It is not set of rules as to what has to be done and what should not be done. That is morality, ethicality, and that's a normative principle. All are those normative principles, norms, but this is beyond that. Dharma is beyond that. So, wonderful definition comes in Kana da Darshanam, Vaisheshika Darshanam, right in the beginning. It is also to be noted that although Vaisheshika is a material science, it is science on Vastu, Dravya, so it is going to be something that we can call as physics. It deals with physics. It's a realistic science, realistic philosophy, deals with the physics which is governing the universe. Therein he says the physics is to be practiced for dharma. Now you can't relate physics with religion, and we know that they are at loggerheads. The science or physics and religion, they are at loggerheads. The history of the world tells us that there have been fierce battles between those who had scientific mind and scientifically inclined people, and on the other hand, the religiously inclined people. They always were at loggerheads and they fought fierce battles. But whereas the physics of Vedic Dharma also deals with physics, and Kana da Maharshi gave us the physics which is for dharma. So he said, to be on the path of dharma, we must know the physical realities properly. We know the physical realities for purpose of material life, and that's why we are embracing the modern technology which is based on physics, because it makes our life convenient. And that materialistic science is for materialism, but Kana da Maharshi's materialistic science is not for materialism, but it is for transcendent, it is for dharma. So the seers who went after physics and such sciences, it was for dharma to be adhered to, dharma to be recognized, dharma to be understood. So dharma is something that is not just to be practiced, but in some stage we have to understand dharma. Like in religion, you have to follow the beliefs. You don't have to understand. You can't even argue. You can't even debate. You can't even question. You can't even interrogate. But you have to just follow the fiat given by the religious texts of various isms in the world. There is nothing to understand. You don't have to understand. You have to just follow. Whereas Kannada says the physics, in classical perspective, physical sciences in physical perspective are to be understanding dharma and then practice the dharma. Anyway, so the dharma gets such a paramount place in philosophy of Kana da Maharshi, Vaisheshika Darshanam. That is what is something that you should be noting down. Then The Dharma, as also described in Manusmriti, another dimension, Dharmo Rakshati Rakshitaha. If you protect Dharma, it will protect you 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, million times. So we need to protect Dharma, and then Dharma would be protecting us. It is not just that we should protect, that those who are in various isms, they think of protecting their religion. They are afraid that their religion might disappear from the surface of the earth, and they are doing so many things to protect their Dharma, their religion precisely. Whereas Dharma is protected by Almighty. In Vedic thought, in Vedic philosophy, the Dharma is protected by Almighty, and mankind needs to protect Dharma, whereby Dharma will protect him. In Vishnu Sahasranama prologue, there comes a mention, Achara Prabhavo Dharmaha Dharmasya Prabhurachyutaha. So Dharma is in Achara, it is in conduct. And Achara has to be understood by looking at great people. So what is that path that we should be following? Mahajano yena gataha sa pantaha. The great noble people, whichever path they walked, that is the path for us to walk. And that is why a Vaidika will be looking at one who is exalted in Achara and will be trying to follow the footsteps of Mahajana, the great noble people. And our epics, our Puranas tell us about all these noble people whom we should try to follow and follow their footsteps and set right our conduct. But at some stage later, we will have to understand the path that we are walking. Therefore, there is Dharma Jignasa, Dharma Mimamsa. We have to understand Dharma and not just practice Dharma. It starts with just practicing, but at some stage we need to understand it. Therefore, we have Darshana for Dharma Mimamsa. And there is Vaisheshika Darshana, which proclaims Athato Dharma Vyakhyasya, and the Mimamsa Darshanam Athato Dharma Jignasa. So anyway, Dharma is something which is a matter of inquiry. Mankind should inquire into Dharma, understand Dharma, investigate Dharma, and comprehend Dharma, and not just practice. See, so Manu etc. are called Dharma Smritis. Manusmriti, Yagnavalkya Smriti. There are so many Smritis, Vasishtha Smriti, Parashara Smriti. So these are all called Dharma Granthas. They tell us about Dharma as to what you should be practicing. And Dharma Mimamsa gives us the inquiry of Dharma to really understand it. So, point is, Yama Niyamas are part of Dharma Achara. Achara Dharma Niti. And that is in English rendered as ethico-religious system. Ethico-religious system, because there is no word for dharma in English, and if we have to take recourse to available word, it becomes religion. But conceptually, there is a big difference between religion and dharma. So the students of yoga need to really go into it and understand what dharma is. Then Patanjali also makes it express that ahimsadi are vratas. Vratas come in dharma. Vrata comes in dharma. Vrata means vow. Vrata vaikalyam. So these are all in dharma practices, dharma sadhana. In English it would be becoming religious practices. Again, let me make it clear. The concept of religion is different, but dharma is rendered as religion. So far we have not coined any word. There is no word available in any other language. Ideally, we must maintain dharma as dharma and not try to render into any other language. So, ahimsadi are vratas. Vratas come in dharma. And that's how these are dharma tattvas. Ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, all these are dharma tattvas. So, ahimsa has to be practiced as dharma tattva and not just as moral, ethical principle. Moral, ethical principles are practiced for one to stand out in society, get name, fame, recognition, trustworthiness. People will believe in such a person who is morally, ethically strong, morally, ethically embracing the principles in life. Then such a person becomes trustworthy. People trust such person, depends on such person. The credibility goes away. That's all. It is needless to say how much one might be at personal loss by practicing moral ethical principles. That's why we deviate from moral ethical principles for our convenience, because we know that we do not get material advantage. If at all, we might get material disadvantage. So that's why we quickly give up a moral ethical principle of ahimsa when we see that materially we are losing. We give up satya because we quickly realize materially we are losers. By practicing satya as a moral ethical principle, you will not be materially rich. You only can become materially poor. So moral ethical principles are quickly divorced, quickly set aside with material gain in view. Because moral ethical path doesn't give you material gain. And that is why we are seeing ourselves taking recourse to opposite, giving up the embrace to moral ethical principles for having material gain. So moral ethical principles are only for name, fame, recognition, etc. You might stand out in the world as a morally and ethically very strong person, uncompromising person, dependable person and trustworthy person. But here it is for Paramartha Siddhi. Dharma is for Paramartha Siddhi. Anyway, in understanding ahimsa as a principle, which of course we considered with the discourse of Tuladhar and Jajali, then we came to a point that we must understand how this natural tendency of himsa bubbles up, and we must take measures against himsa as to how it can be mitigated, how it can be reduced, and how it can be set aside, or how it can be neutralized if possible. And that's why we were considering himsa as to what is himsa, why it happens, how it happens, how much it happens, and we were given that sutra by Patanjali, that long sutra on based on which we had some delineation. Vitarka ahimsadaya krutakarita anumodita lobha krodha moha purvaka mrudumadya adimatra dukkha jnana anantya phala iti, and then pratipaksha bhavanam. So that sutra was giving us kind of some direction in understanding how himsa happens. And our ahimsa is to avoid himsa. Ahimsa by itself is not a practice for us. We have to only see that the himsa is mitigated, himsa is discouraged to the extent possible, because himsa is a natural tendency. And therefore we got that wonderful basis for analysis, that how himsa happens, and then which kind of himsa can be taken measure on at the first instance. So first of all, we must try to work on the himsa tendency from, if you recall, from far end. Because strong himsa tendency cannot be resisted. The vasana will be so strong that you will not be able to take any measure. And that's why we were given the guidance. But anyway, we are going to consider that sutra when it comes. After the 5 yamas mentioned, there will be mention of Mahabharata, therefore implied Anuvrata, and then comes the Pratipaksha Bhavana. So we are not going to deal on that sutra furthermore, because we are going to reserve it when it comes after about another 4 or 5 sutras. So with that, we are coming to the end of Ahimsa, the first yama. Now, let me tell you how in yoga we are given measures to take some means to take measures against himsa tendency. Now, basically, why himsa happens, according to the psychodynamics behind himsa described by yoga psychology, is that basically we have unrest in mind. Out of restfulness, we will never indulge in himsa. It is out of restlessness in mind that we indulge in himsa. Although it is a natural tendency, for it to really manifest and have a growth, it is because of discontent in the mind. It is because ashanta vritti in the mind. So when the mind is quiet, we will not be instigated to go for himsa. We will be going away from himsa tendency, himsa manifestation, when we have tranquility in the mind, shanti in the mind, shanti samadhan in mind, and therefore lack of it is only reason that triggers himsa tendency, manures himsa tendency, actualizes himsa tendency, and manifests the himsa tendency. For this purpose, we need a mind culture to be practicing genuine ahimsa, and by refraining ourselves from any kind of himsa. We need a particular mind culture, mind state, the chemistry of mind. And that is basically shanti samadhan, peace of mind and contentment in mind. If you are not contented in your life, you are prone to be vulnerable to himsa activities. So for Shanti Samadhan, there is something that is called as Satsanga, Sattva Sangha, Sadhu Sangha, Santa Sangha, Shastra Sangha, Sadhana Sangha. So as it has been repeatedly impressed that basic form of yoga is by Satsanga, Sadhana Sangha, Shastra Sangha. So this will help one develop that mind required for weaning oneself away from himsa, whereby it would become ahimsa practice. Then the principles of yagna, dana, tapas, the noble principles to be practiced. So if we give importance to principle of yagna, dana and tapas, and you should recall just now we dealt with in the last session Pancamaha yagnyas. They were yagnyas. So yagna is performed with some sense of gratitude. Yagna bhava, yagna vritti is nothing but it is out of enormous gratitude for Almighty, enormous gratitude for nature around us, for the very nature, enormous gratitudes for our ancestors. The society. So you should recall when we dealt with the yagna principle earlier, long time ago, at the very commencement of our sessions, educative sessions. So it is advised that one goes back to the principle of yagna, dana, tapas discussed earlier. Then apart from the triad of yagna, dana, tapas, there was also mention of satsanga, sadhana sangha, shastra sangha. So this also was delineated, so I won't reopen that topic. That would be repetition, and one can go back when this was discussed earlier. Sat Sangha, which is Sadhu Sangha, Sattva Sangha, Santa Sangha, and then Sadhana Sangha and Shastra Sangha. So this is another triad apart from Yagna, Dana, Tapa. It is Sat Sangha, Sadhana Sangha, Shastra Sangha, Sangha Traya. And then came the Chatushyam of Satvik Ahar Vihar Achar Vichar. So these are fundamental practices given in classical yoga by the wisdom of the Lord. So Satvik Ahar Vihar Achar Vichar. So the 3 plus 3 plus 4, this formula must be inscribed in your minds if you want to be students of yoga, and try to explore them, understand them, and see how, to what extent you can be getting them into practice, what way they can come into your practice, and that will give you the basic quality required in Chitta, which is Shanta Dharma. Samadhani Vritti, Shanta Vritti. So yoga in its sadhana, like asana pranayama, also have enormous endowment and bounty to give this state of mind. Now that's an aspect of sadhana sangha. Kaya vacha manasa sadhana. So the yoga sadhana will also help you unearth the Shanta Dharma and the Santushta Vritti, Santosha Vritti. So that will come very handy to be not falling into the trap of himsa, but escape yourself from the tendency of himsa. So there are asanas and pranayamas which work on very physiology. So as students of yoga, you should know that there is always a biochemistry to every state of mind that is sought after. And asana, pranayam, japa sadhana will be handy for you to use and apply and avail of to trigger necessary biochemistry. It would work on your the cellular chemistry, it would work on your glandular system, it would work on your nervous system, because they are most vulnerable to fall prey to vasanas, tendencies. So see how much yoga sadhana offers you for ahimsa vritti. And whatever is done for ahimsa is the same practice for satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha. So do not have this view that 5 yamas will have 5 sets of practices. There is only one set of practices for 5 yamas as well as 5 niyamas. And these practices are broadly encased in the framework of Sangatraya, Yajnadi Traya, and Ahar Viharadi Chatushtya. So 3 plus 3 plus 4 formula will come good for every principle mentioned in yamas and niyamas. You don't have to do different practices for each of the yamas and each of the niyamas. So it is integral practice. So as student of yoga, one has advantage over this, that one can use the very body processes, body, mind, breath processes in their composite and collective dynamics to engender that chemistry which would give sprout to noble vritti of ahimsa, also satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha, and even shaucha, santosha, tapatvadhyaya, ishwar pranidhan. That's why one of the texts says, yogat yoga pravartate. Yoga comes out of yoga. Yoga comes from yoga. So some form of yoga will give you higher form of yoga. That's why yogat yoga pravartate. So for yoga, we have to take recourse to yoga. The point is, for ahimsa, there is not a separate set of practice. The general practice culture of Adharma, Paramartha and Yoga will sufficiently work for you to develop the ahimsa principle in you to start with, to be weaning away from himsa. So with reference to sutra that of 5 yamas, this is sufficient to understand what is ahimsa, because we will consider ahimsa once again when we go to that sutra which is krita, karita, anumodita, etc., and then ahimsa pratisthayam. So we will be considering other dimensions of ahimsa when we go to those sutras. But enough for the time being. So with this, we are concluding the topic of ahimsa in yama. And now we will be proceeding to satya, the second yama. Namaskar all of you.